Coronavirus emergency. Financial markets around the world rocked overnight amid new concerns about the spread of the virus.
Continuing our breaking news coverage on CBS Sports HQ, I'm Chris Hassel with Amanda Guerra. The NCAA making it official. The NCAA tournament has been canceled for 2020.
To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Hi. This is an incredibly difficult time. Everyone's asking me to, write it down, document how I feel. But the truth is, I don't have words. I still don't know what to say. I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. Speaking of uncertainty, just a few short days ago, I was wondering if I would ever be back at school. But yesterday, March 17th, 2020, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly announced that all schools in Kansas be temporarily closed for the rest of the year. And that means half of my last semester of high school was just taken away. And this may not be a lot to some people, but I think to most of us it means a lot. To most of us, it means that this closure that we were promised since the day we entered kindergarten has been taken away. I don't know about you guys, but that's a really, really hard pill to swallow. So last night for me was very, very rough. Trying to process that I may not get a high school graduation. That was something really, really hard for me to grieve. And it hurt really bad, and I'm still grieving it right now, today. That's why I'm recording this. I was laying in bed, making phone calls, talking to people, getting their thoughts on this. And the general consensus was that we are all mourning something. Whether it's a high school graduation or something else. We're all mourning the loss of something because of this horrible virus that was a lot worse than people thought. So all in all, it was a really difficult night in terms of faith. I didn't feel like praying even though it was the only thing really any of us could do. I didn't feel like it. I was angry. I was mad. Everything in my body hurt a little bit too much to be able to turn to God in that particular moment. And He knew that. So I waited, and time passed, and I just couldn't sleep. And it was like 1:30 in the morning, and I was just staring at the wall. And on my bedside table, I have a lovely little statue of Mother Mary. And I looked at it, and I heard this voice. And it said, "You know what, Kate? You've reached out to about everyone except for the person that you need to lean on most." So I got out my phone and I started playing the rosary on this app that reads the rosary to you. I tried to pray a couple of lines, but it hurt to pray. I was almost choked up physically, like I couldn't say words physically. So I just eventually put my head on my pillow and just listened. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Something that I had been praying for. And for a long time before this school announcement even happened, I'd been watching the news. And I just kept saying to myself, God, how can you allow this to happen? Because I know this is 100% your permissive will. You didn't will this on anyone. You didn't say, I want this to happen. But I just kept praying in frustration despite that piece of knowledge that I knew He didn't want us to go through this. But He allowed it to happen anyway. So this whole time I've been praying, how can you allow this to happen? But all of a sudden at 1:30 in the morning, I was taken back to what Mary did with Jesus. You know, immediately she knew His fate was going to come. She knew that she was going to have to raise a child and make sacrifices. And she knew His awful fate was going to arrive somehow. And she knew that God's will needed to be done. So she stood at the foot of that cross and watched her son die. She was crying. She was bawling. She was upset. She didn't know what to think. But she knew she couldn't stop it. She knew it needed to be done for the good of humanity. For the good of people. Sitting there watching her only child die and be sacrificed for the world. She knew it needed to be done. So that perspective was brought back to me, and all of a sudden I heard this whisper, this soft maternal presence, clear as day. And Mary said to me, He is with us in the suffering. And that's when I knew that God was at the foot of every single one of our crosses right now, crying with us, mourning with us, suffering with us. And if that's not the truest form of love, I don't know what is. See, God could stop this. God has the power to stop any of this. I truly believe that. But He chooses to sit and cry with us because He knows that something good is going to come out of this. He knows that this is happening for the greater good. He knows that something unimaginable, incomprehensible is going to come out of this. So He's sitting and allowing it to happen. Because love is dying for the goodwill of another. And if that's not dying to the goodwill of another, if this whole coronavirus thing isn't having to die for the goodwill of another, then what are we all doing? We have to get stuff taken away to keep other people safe. And this isn't to complain about that, but we have to die for the goodwill of one another. And I think that's what makes this experience the hardest. We have to become capable of the most authentic version of love for the good of humanity. Just like Mary did. She suffered. She suffered. She watched her son die. She watched her son suffer. She watched her son save humanity. It was awful and terrible for everyone in the equation. Jesus suffered so much pain. Mary suffered so much mourning, confusion, and loss. They are both with us in the suffering. They are holding us. Jesus is at the foot of each of our crosses, and Mary is right there next to Him, on bended knee, praying that we go to Him, praying for the good of humanity, pointing us to the Father like a good mama always does. Jesus is with us in the suffering, just like Mary was with Him in His own suffering. So I ask you to not lose hope. In fact, in this time, just please remember that He's with us. Now, I'm not making this message to pretend like I'm not still hurting and not still confused and not still scared. It is okay to grieve. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to ask questions. I still can't make sense of this, and I may never be able to. But in this time where the whole world is just suffering, just please remember that God is with us. Our Heavenly Mama told me. I heard that straight from the Queen of Heaven. Again, this isn't supposed to be easy, but God is crying with us, and we are called to the most authentic, truest form of love that we could ever experience. So please, stay healthy, stay positive, cry if you need to, and pray for each other. Let's pray for each other. Bye.